So where did we get to the point where work was a place where we even could search for meaning? Because historically, work was not such a thing. And if we go back to the definition of work, it really is a means of survival. And here we are zapping through Zoom, contemplating if I should write or create or dance or sing or express ourselves. Should I work part-time, full-time, flexible, remote, distributed? And it's such a luxury to be able to even entertain this. So I wanted to say that as a first thing, because I'm very grateful that this is our time to explore this. And I really do encourage today, tonight, tomorrow, to be as inclusive and experimental as you like. So the more you're willing to dance with me, the more fun we're going to have. I thought about what if. This is kind of the design thinker question. What would it look like if we had a world that was such as follows? And we don't wake up and it's a dream, it's actually reality. The first thing is that work wouldn't be a place where people worked their shit out on other people, but it would be a place where grown-ups acted like grown-ups. It would mimic or mirror more of what we see in nature: participatory leadership, going and sensing to responding to the needs of individuals, of teams, and the organizational operating system that gets great work done, that validates our contribution, and is in many ways not afraid to learn, experiment, and grow as a collective. Work wouldn't be something that we had to do, that we had to stay late to avoid the drama and the things that are in our life that we're maybe avoiding. And it could be a source of energy. Work wouldn't be endless Zooms that make you want to jump out the window, and potentially could be playgrounds for both kids, apprentices, workers, and mentors. Work wouldn't be something that was a container for our fear and our anxiety, and something that we couldn't stop doing because our identity and sense of self and sense of worth was so tied up, but was something that lit us up. Hence the dude surfing. I picked this for Australia. The dude surfing in his suit. Work wouldn't be something necessarily where microdosing became a phenomenon to get through the day or to alter your perspective of the environment in which you work in, but would actually be a source of joy. Work wouldn't be something where the majority of the working world is disengaged or actively disengaged, but is a place where we get to wake up and live our best day, have time for rest, time for friends, time for collaboration, time for exercise, time for doing great work and our best work. And work wouldn't be a place that was necessarily organized around status and power and pay and position, but could also be organized around things like the work to be done, which I can't seem to click through. Just the things that get work done: operations, design, management, experience design, user experience, promotion. These are all things that companies do, yet someone is designated as that. And we've seen in the last year, if not years, that businesses actually have lots of latent talent that they're not using. And people like threes. Our brains love threes, as you probably have come to know. So I'm going to fall into that and go with, we all have the same amount of time. We don't have the same focus and attention skills as everyone. And we certainly don't have the same type of energy in terms of managing it, directing it, and being discerning with it. So I want to start off with managing our energy, which is related to finding joy and meaning in work. Then look at creative expression, or just the ability to express ourselves through whatever it is that is our work or is our sense of self. And then this idea of emergence. And as the world shifts and changes and our work as a practice evolves, how do we evolve with it? So that's the ambition. And I have to say that the last one is going to be as experimental as I can, because I actually don't know what's going to emerge. So I mentioned earlier that work is typically a means of survival, and the workday was 5 hours. It was hunt for food, and then the rest of the time was leisure. So we are now in this conundrum, so to speak, where we're contemplating, remunerating, and searching for work that lights us up, myself included. So when we acknowledge that, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's also a admission that maybe it's about the journey and the search and not the destination. Maybe it's about the practice of work and not the position or the job. And maybe it's about exploring parts of yourself that have been left out or unemployed, and employing them, whether it's in paid work, emotional labor, or some other form. Work typically was routine and repetitive, and we're moving more and more in the knowledge economy to creative and complex. Potentially, I just made this up, we are over here, like in the infancy of this. And if we think about the history of the world and our time on this planet, there's that great study that shows that if the whole existence of life on this planet is 365 days, humans show up on December 31st at 11 p.m. We basically are here for a fraction of the time. So this whole ability to look for meaning in work is such a new phenomenon. I'll give you a little background of me and why the hell I'm here. Is I spent a lot of time doing work that sucked my soul, so to speak. So I lived in London for 12 years. I ran around trying to prove something, which was really a sense of lack, a sense of anxiety, and fear of failure. So that's part and parcel of a lot of entrepreneurs' stories of trying to prove themselves. And I found at some point that I wasn't really employing or giving life to the parts of me that were expressive or that really catered to the fact that I love learning, and I felt stagnant. So I went back to school. This is not me going back to school, but this is what ended up happening. Is I went and I researched and I knocked on people's doors and I asked them, how do you do innovation, and what is collaboration, and how does creativity really work? And I found some answers. And then I found that everyone is contemplating the same types of questions about how to design their day and how to design their work, and more importantly, how to design their life. And then faceplant, and then try again, and then faceplant. So my slide before here was barista, sales marketing director, academic, think tank, failed DJ, bartender. I've tried a lot of things, but at some point the clothes didn't fit me and I tried something on, which I guess is the sign of resilience. And then I started thinking about, well, why was I searching for happiness in work? Because I was finding moments of happiness and joy, but I wasn't finding meaning. And meaning took me to a different place, because meaning binds time. It takes the past and the present and the future and puts them into this beautiful concoction. Just like plants bind light so they can stay alive, humans bind time. And that's how we create a sense of meaning. We can see ourselves and reflect back on ourselves, and therefore create a sense of meaning, which is subjective. Typically, how I was waking up and how about 80% of the people I've worked with wake up is through their phone, and then they check Facebook or Instagram. I stopped doing that and I became a lot happier. And the people I know who stopped doing that became a lot happier too. So that's my first hack or tip, which is probably nothing novel. I also started napping, which is kind of enforced or endorsed in Asian countries for a couple of reasons. One, there's no stigma. And two, you're at work for 15 hours and there's no chance of going home. So it's basically just taking a break. I don't feel guilty anymore when I nap. And in fact, some of my naps have led to some of my best creativity, I believe. I could be delusional. And then this idea of multitasking, and my brother and I have this conversation all the time. He's been diagnosed with ADHD and given Ritalin as a student, and that seems to be a phenomenon that exists no matter whether you've been diagnosed or not, is training our attention and stopping the god awful habit of multitasking, which is not doing many tasks well. It's in effect switching between tasks very quickly. Zero inbox, a creation of one fellow that he never intended it to be a thing. And my dad swears by it, and he has agitation whenever there's an email sitting in there. He can't enjoy his ice cream or his movie. And I said to him, there is a thing that does a search for your email. He's like, I know, but I don't care. So there's aspects that of the modern way of working has created these sort of extra problems. The ideal workplace, this is the design for the eudaimonia machine for human flourishing, is spaces for inspiration, conversation, research, light work, and deep work. And unfortunately, very few buildings, I showed the Lego building at the beginning, are designed to cater to all of these different modes of work. And in a pandemic, we have to create all of these spaces often in our own home. We can also pay attention to our cortisone level, our testosterone and melatonin levels, which dip and skyrocket throughout the day. We also can pay attention to our chronotype and to our chronobiology and understand whether we're a early bird, a night owl, or a third bird. And there's tests online that we can provide if you're interested in taking a test. I personally have shifted quite a bit in the last year where things are happening later. And I felt guilty at the beginning, but when I was at my peak at 9 or 9:30 a.m., it's now more like 10:30. So everything is shifted by about an hour. And as an audit or as a thing to think about when we're thinking about our energy, I think there's how do we want to spend our time, which is often wisely. What attitude do we take towards our work and our day? How competent are we in those things that we set out to do? What resources, both inner resources and access to support and external resources, do we have? And what creative constraints have we put on ourselves? So Dan gave me 5 p.m. PST for this presentation, so that became a constraint. And I knew I had so much sleep and so much coffee today. And we get to make these decisions all the time if we're conscious. And I mentioned about the work-life balance. I really do believe that at one point that was a good aspiration to find balance in the things that make up our work and our life. And if anything, it's arguable that the laundry machine of work and life has tumbled everything together. And it's very hard to distinguish work from not working. And the separation has become very opaque. And then we move to expression. And as we go into this section, I just want to sort of prime you on Dan's invitation that it's very difficult to ask for help when you're in a position of authority or perceived authority. So knowing what is needed when, and to be able to like open up. And that's part of asking for support or resources so that you will have more energy. So energy and creative expression, or energy and expression, are integrated or wholly united, because if you get someone to help you, like a key helped me with Mentimeter, I could focus on what the hell I'm going to say. It's kind of common sense, but it's shocking how many people are worried about how they'll be perceived by asking for help. And when it comes to expression, this was a quote from Studs Terkel, who is no longer alive, but he was a journalist and he studied work for a long time. And his work is about a search for daily meaning as well as daily bread, for recognition as well as cash, for astonishment rather than torpor, and in short, for a sort of life rather than a Monday through Friday sort of dying. And when I heard that, I realized that like I have a duty to myself to not just get through the week. And if I could kind of dread Fridays and look forward to Mondays, perhaps I would get something, I got something right. And I started to think about like, well, where am I working and how am I working? So I started matching my mood to the work that I was doing, to where I went and at what time of the day. And sometimes I matched my work to the mood that I was in, to the mode of work, or to that given moment. And it became actually quite liberating to be like, I'm just not feeling like writing right now. Maybe I'll go for a walk and have a conversation with someone. So this is expression. We were talking about expressing ourselves and what we needed, and why we do what we do. And not many of us in this room, I would imagine, are worried about billable hours and Series D investment and selling to Google. But maybe you are, and that's okay. Maybe you want to be like Puff Daddy and disappear into the horizon on your yacht. Or maybe you want to be like me and pre-COVID go to your favorite coffee shop for an hour or two to write your heart out in order to think. And what I learned was really what I was doing there was stacking my triggers. So stacking your triggers could be as simple as a Moleskine notebook, a Muji pen, some good music, maybe some flowers, maybe a nice photo, and you induce a state of, aha, this is time to get on with doing the work that matters. Unfortunately, it was and is getting very difficult to do that in an environment that seems hostile, i.e., the American workplace. I don't know what it's like to work in Australia, but I have worked in America and in England, and some of these workplaces are not places you would ever want to go to if they didn't pay you money. So what happens when you have a place that is a place you want to hang out? You start getting companies like Squarespace or WordPress, which doesn't have an office, and etc. So the idea here is to figure out how to induce a state for creative expression. And I love this idea of autobiographical thinking, which is really getting in tune with yourself and understanding your story of your life. Reflection, which we know is one of the best ways to learn and integrate your learning, and trusting in yourself, and creating more space for light, more space for creativity, more space for collaboration, more space for connection. And then we move to the final thing. In essence, this last thing is in many ways called practice, or contribution, or something that's bubbling up, whatever's here for us now. So that's how I kind of want to end today. And I love this quote that's from a magazine from Australia called New Philosopher. When our lives don't have the shape we assumed they would have, we can find that we no longer know who we are. So Josh and Aviv, you are in transition. It's a great invitation to explore and try on different hats and different suits and different dresses and different shoes to see how it feels. The UX designer becomes the art director. Then the art director goes, I want to do bed and breakfast, and becomes a bed and breakfast host. And then he says, you know what? I'm going to go back to school and get my, I don't know, law degree. And then it ends up being a legal eagle and helping out with human rights. That's all possible. It doesn't have to be so finite and so static. These are scary stats. These were pulled from a website called Office Vibe pre-COVID, but I'm sure they're probably similar or worse. 60% of employees say that the job they have is taking a toll on their personal life. 56% of the employees that were polled, this is thousands of employees across all types of different companies, believe they don't have any career advancement, i.e. personal growth opportunities. What a shame. And here's what we're looking for in work. This is not an exhaustive list. Growth, inspiration, connection, progress, autonomy, meaning, payment, accountability. We actually have a pretty high demand list. So the question becomes, what's reasonable, what's not? Do we want to be more entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial, and exploring the different modalities of work? And some quick hacks. So find those times and protect those times when you're at your best. And I don't necessarily say you have to get a chair like this and a fancy setup, but if that makes you happy and you can do your best work at 10 a.m., then go for it. Know yourself. Know why you do what you do. Know your values, and that will lead to meaningful action. And job crafting or career crafting really has three components. The first one is cognitive, the stories we tell ourselves, the mental energy we give to what it is we do. The second one is the care and the gumption which we bring to the work tasks, the activities, the projects, and the things that we do at work. And the third part is our relatedness and our relationships to colleagues. And statistics show that having a best friend or a good friend at work can make all the difference. And I was just talking to someone today who said that the two people who he worked with in the office, when there was an office, he loved hanging out with and talking to, but because they don't work in an office and they aren't on the same team, he hasn't talked to them in a year. And he just realized it. And I was like, ugh, like that's kind of a thing that we haven't designed for, connected, a sense of belonging in the workplace. So my final thoughts are: consider that you don't have a job and that you have a practice. That flexibility about work has been grossly misunderstood, and it's simply about giving trust for adults to be adults and to find the time and space to do your best work. That the workplace could be a space, it could be a library, it could be your kitchen, it can be anywhere with a strong Wi-Fi signal if you work in that economy. And that you might perform your best when you work the least, i.e., you do non-work and cognitively or creatively rewarding work, like walking and connecting with diverse people and reading and experimenting. And then that leads to, you know, especially if you're working in the creative industries, really innovative and ingenious work. And the final thing, which I'm hammering home a dead horse here, is when we do things like this and join a random Zoom, or maybe it's not that random, from a dude in Canada, it's a high contrast conversation. It's like going to the Republicans going over to the Democrats to have lunch and knowing that they're not going to agree, but at least they're going to learn something and maybe challenge their assumptions. So I'm sure there's things that I've said today that you're not so sure about based on your life experience, and that's going to be an opportunity for us to jam on.